Hello, and welcome to the Moms Love Coaching Podcast, where we talk about self-care from the inside out for moms. I'm your host, Carrie McFarland, along with Angie Turgeon-Ledoux. We are certified life coaches and moms, and in this podcast, we'll go beyond the take a spa day advice and talk about real and sustainable ways that you can feel better, be happier, and stay out of overwhelm and burnout. You spend your life taking care of everyone else. In this podcast, each week, it's all about you taking care of you with no guilt and no apologies. We're so happy that you've decided to spend this time with us, so go ahead and grab your favorite cup of coffee, find a comfortable place, and get ready to spend the next 30 minutes focusing on the most important person in your life, you. All right, welcome everybody to Moms Love Coaching, Self-Care from the Inside Out for Moms. Carrie McFarland.
Angie Turgeon-Ledoux.
And we have a different setup today. We are together in person in real life.
Yes.
And not on the computer. Although if you look at the video, it looks like we're separated. It looks like the screens are separated. That's funny.
Yeah, it looks like Carrie's way closer to the camera than I am.
I didn't notice.
Maybe I could lean in a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And lean in. We might not even post this video, so you might not even see it, but it's just for our own amusement. So
we're amusing. You should have seen us testing the mic.
Yes. Yes. We're hoping that the mic works well. We have spent lots of time this morning. How long have we spent? Almost an hour trying to get the sound correct. So we're hoping that it works. We're just going to go with it because that's what we do. So it's the end of May. We're continuing and ending our series on how to get through hard things. And our last topic is chronic illness and injury, which I know is a super happy topic, but people have these things. And I think it's important to talk about it because it is a hard thing in life that people sometimes need to get through. I know that I did. I know lots of people that are having it now or had it in the past, and it does take a lot out of you in the moment, but you don't really necessarily realize that until you're out of it and looking back on it and thinking, wow, that really was a lot. Like, you just try to get through the day to day. And if you're anything like me, you also sort of beat yourself up because you're thinking, I should be able to do these things. I should be able to pick up these things or have more stamina or not be so tired, or have more strength or not feel sick or power through my day, things like that. So you tend to beat yourself up over stuff like that.
I'm wondering if you want to tell us a little bit about your story, how old your kids were, and what happened and how it impacted the thoughts that you had about yourself as a mom.
Yeah. So some of you who follow this might know a little bit about this story because I have talked about it before, but when my youngest was just over a year and a half, so she turned a year and a half in August, and this happened in November. So she just reached the year and a half mark. And it happened, actually, it happened on Thanksgiving Day. I remember because now I had signs before then that something was going to happen. So I had a back injury, and it wasn't a back, I say that and people are like, oh, did you get in a car accident? And no, I had nothing happen to me. Nothing happened to me. It's just that I pulled a muscle. It started in my neck and my shoulders, and it was pretty severe. And over the course of 2-ish weeks, the pulled muscle went all the way down my whole back into my lower back. So from my neck to my lower back was pulled muscles. And if you've ever pulled a muscle in one part of your back, or even like, say, your leg or your arm or something like that, you know how painful that can be. And I had it throughout my entire back.
And it's true, the neck bone is connected to the hip bone.
It's true.
It's true.
It's everything. This is what I learned. Everything is connected.
It's all connected.
Because I would swallow my food and I would feel it in my lower back.
Wow.
That's how severe this was. Yeah. I would talk and my back would hurt. I would laugh and my back would hurt. I mean, it was extremely severe. And even looking back on it now, I didn't appreciate how severe it was. I mean, I knew it was severe and I knew it hurt, but even then in the middle of it, I still downplayed it as, I should be able to get through this. I should be able to fix this. I'm making a big deal about this. Other people have injuries and they just keep going. And that's what other people told me too, that I was making a big deal of, I was making it bigger than it was and all
that was
stuff.
helpful. Not.
Yeah, that was super helpful.
And then you're caring for these two little kids, right? You got a toddler and the other one was preschool age. She 4?
She was, she was 5 at that point. She was about 5 at that point. So, or she had just turned 5 in July. Yes.
So was she in kindergarten at that time?
Yeah, she was in kindergarten. So it happened on Thanksgiving Day. I remember because I reached in to pull out the turkey and that's when it happened.
Oh no. And were you like stuck? Like you're bent over stuck, or were you like screaming?
It was
pain?
More like, ow, like that hurt. I could still move, right? It was my neck and my shoulders. So I didn't even realize how severe it was. I just figured I would take a Tylenol and the next day it would be better, and I'd probably have a couple days of being sore and the next day it would be better.
Like you slept wrong, like.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But it didn't turn out that way. The next day it was worse. And then more muscles in my back started to go. And the next day it was worse and more muscles in my back started to, they
wanted to join the party.
They didn't want to feel left out. Yeah. And I wanted to be inclusive. So I left it. Over the course of that 2 weeks, it just kept getting worse. And I tried to make it better. Now we're getting into Christmas time. And it was right before Christmas. I couldn't really move very well. I couldn't get out of bed very well. I couldn't get up off the couch I had to be very careful about how I moved. And then what happened is we have stairs in our house. And because I had to be careful going up and down the stairs because moving my legs in that way, either going up or down, aggravated it. So I had to be very careful. I was a little too careful and I misjudged the last step.
I didn't know this.
And yes.
Oh my goodness.
I misjudged the last step. Now I didn't fall, but I slammed my foot down into the floor.
And that, if you've ever missed a step, you know what that feels like. You tense up.
Yeah.
All over the
body
place.
Tensed up. And just the impact of my foot on the floor made it like 1,000 times worse. Like, at that point, I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand, I couldn't lay down, I couldn't I was just like in a state of I don't know what to do, and then I started to panic.
Were you home alone with?
No, everybody was there because it happened early in the morning because I was trying to fix this on my own. So I was getting up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to make sure that I could get up and not have to rush and try to do some stretches and be able to move enough that I could function. So I would try to get up 4 o'clock in the morning before anybody else. And then that happened. And
fix yourself.
Yes, that's how I felt. I had to do it myself. I had to go to the hospital. I didn't know what else to do.
That day?
That minute, I had to get Scott, and I don't even remember how.
How'd you do that?
I did that because I was at the bottom of the stairs. I don't remember that part.
Could you even, were you just standing there afraid to move because the pain was so intense?
Yeah. And it wasn't just, I was afraid of the pain. It was any little tiny movement, even just my elevated breathing, because now I was panicking because it hurt so bad, was aggravating it. It was, I couldn't escape it. Whereas before it hurt, but it was bad, but I could escape it a little by loosening myself up and taking Tylenol and doing those things. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't do anything. I didn't know what to do.
Oh my goodness.
So I went to the hospital and.
So you packed the kids up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Scott helped me, but
Mhm.
yes, we brought them
Somehow you got yourself to the car.
and somehow got there.
You probably blanked it out because it was so painful.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel like it was more painful in childbirth.
Mm.
It was bad. It was excruciatingly
It's every
bad.
movement.
Every movement. And this is how I learned about anatomy, that everything in your body is connected. And when I say that, I am not kidding. You realize that just every little thing is connected, like just, opening and closing my hand. I would feel that in my ribs, because in my rib muscles, because the arm is right connected to it was severe. Anyway, long story short, I went to a chiropractor. I went to him for a year, and at the end of the year, I would say I was 80%. So much better than I was, but still not completely out of it. And I had relapses over the course of the next few years because I was still learning how to manage whatever this is. I still don't know what it is. But I do have to be careful about certain things. Like I gave up gluten. I have to do stretches every day. There's certain activities that I can't do, like certain yoga poses, or I'm blanking on what it is. The planks. I can't do. I can't
do a modified. Can you do a modified?
I can do planks, but I have to be careful because if I overdo it, or they have all those weird positions planks now that you can do. I will pull out my the rib muscles, which have a very long name to them, but I don't remember what that is. But like the muscles in my
intercostal
there it is.
Ribs.
Yes, that's it. So this is part of the reason that I wanted to talk about this, because it is a hard thing. And I know that other people go through maybe even harder things than that. But I do understand what it's like to kind of have a before and after in your life, in terms of like, this is when I was healthy and could do almost anything I wanted. And then I had a part where I couldn't do anything that I wanted. And now I'm in the other part where I can do most things that I want, but it is always on my mind. I always have to think about it.
And when you were going through that, trying to get yourself healed and healthy, you're the homemaker. You're responsible for taking care of the house and making sure the baby is taken care of. You got a kiddo in kindergarten.
Yep.
As many moms do. Were you piling on the guilt and the shame of like, I can't do these things that I used to be able to do? Yes. Oh no, I'm going to wreck my child forever.
Yes. Yeah. My biggest guilt, and I'm not going to lie, I still have this guilt. My daughter is going to be 20 in July. And one of my biggest guilts about that whole time is that I could no longer pick her up. She was 5 years old and I couldn't pick her up. So the last time I picked her up was probably before that Thanksgiving where it all started. But I didn't know that would be the last time that I could pick her up, because by the time I get out of it, she was too big and I couldn't, I wouldn't have been able to pick her up whether I had an injury or not. So I was able to pick up my other daughter.
But you probably shouldn't have been picking her up once you got the injury.
Yeah. Well, I had to, because she was a baby and I was the sole caregiver during the day, because my husband worked and I didn't really have any help. So I had to pick her up, but I did it a lot less. And I definitely let her be a little more independent in terms of like, instead of me just picking her up to do something, I would get something for her to stand on and she would do it herself, So in that way, it's probably a little more helpful for her, because I did kind of foster that independence probably more than I did with my firstborn, but it's really not the way that I would have wanted it. When I look back, there are things I can pull out that are good, because that's something that I always try to do. But there are definite things that I still grieve over, and I don't think I've come to terms with it. Like I don't feel bad about myself because of it. I don't blame myself. It just kind of is what it is. But there is that, there is still that grief that I couldn't do certain things
Well, wishing it would have been different is, I think, natural, as long as you don't stay in that wishing it was different. It had been.
Right.
What is our coach says to us, if you argue with, it's Byron Katie that says, if you argue with reality, you'll only be wrong 100% of the time.
Right.
That's all.
Exactly. Right. The suffering is optional.
Yeah, suffering is optional.
Yeah. So
it sounds like there was a lot of opportunity. I mean, that you must have gone through that, like, what am I going to do? How do you know if I'm going to come out of this? Is this what my life is going to be like now?
Mm-hmm.
As you were navigating this injury?
Yeah.
Trying to understand, A, what happened, and B, then how to fix it. If it was like, did you go through a time where you thought, this is how I'm going to have to live the rest of my life with this pain?
Yes. After the stair incident is when I really lost hope. Before that, I was in pain and I wasn't happy and I was frustrated, but I still had this sense of, I just need to do these things and it's just going to take a little time and I will get out of this eventually. Right. So I did have some hope and some optimism and I was looking into the future and thinking, all right, well, this isn't ideal, but I'm going to get through it. After the stair incident, I wouldn't say I went into a deep depression, but I definitely I started to feel hopeless about my prospects.
Mm.
I really thought that I was going to end up being in a wheelchair.
Mm.
That's what I thought, to the point where I was thinking that we were going to have to move because our house would not accommodate a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. We have an old cape and everything is narrow and we don't even have like archways into each room, which usually, is that what they're called? Archways. Yeah. We have doorways into each of our rooms. Mm-hmm. So each room is closed off by a door, right? Because it's an old house and that's what they used to do to help with the heat and everything. So our house would not accommodate a wheelchair. So I was thinking we were going to have to move because I didn't see me coming out of it. So it was not a fun time. It was not a fun time.
So I imagine it was a very isolating time because you really, I can also imagine you weren't really going out and going to play groups and things like that, like trying to stay home as much because your mobility was so impacted by the injury. How did you, if you could go back now knowing what you know about how the brain works and how your thoughts create your feelings, create your actions, if you could go back and talk to that person you were at that time feeling really hopeless, alone, isolated, what would you say to her? What would be your, how would you help her?
One of the things that I learned is when you panic about certain things. So I learned, but I didn't realize I was learning it. I was learning about
the best lessons, right?
I was learning about my nervous system. Looking back on it, when I had chronic pain and my muscles were constantly, not cooperating, let's say. But sometimes something would happen and I would aggravate it, right? Either I would bend down too fast because something was happening with the kids, or I'd twist without thinking and something would happen. So something would happen and I'd get, that sharp, intense, acute pain, right? That happens. So I didn't just experience the pain. I also experienced the wave of panic. I mean, I used to say this jokingly, but I don't think it's a joke. I think I developed some sort of PTSD from this injury because any time anything happened, it would be like just this wave of, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like I would almost have a panic attack about it. And so I think what I would go back and tell my old self is breathe, really breathe, because eventually what I learned I needed, and this was years after years of having this, that I finally learned this.
Now the kids are both in elementary school and middle school.
Yeah. Yeah. I learned that if something like that happened, because I would just literally be sitting on the couch and I'd reach for something and something would go out. Like, I mean, it was random, which also made it scary because I never knew when it was going to happen, because I didn't know what was happening. So it wasn't anything I could always predict. There were certain things I knew would set it off, but like, when you're sitting on the couch and you go to reach for your drink and all of a sudden your whole side goes out and now you can't breathe without being in excruciating pain, it kind of gets in your head a little bit.
I think about it like when you're working out, or like, say, for example, you're doing a yoga routine. When you first learn yoga, you have to be thinking about, okay, this is where I position my arm. This is how I move my leg. Like this condition was requiring you to be that intentional about your movement. So you all can imagine the amount of brain energy that had to go into that. So the fact that it would happen every now and then because you weren't thinking about it, of course.
Yeah.
And I think that reaction, that panic, the body doesn't like to be in pain. The brain avoids pain. So I think that was a very natural reaction to that situation.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the breathing, I learned over time how much that helped. I mean, I had already been used, and I actually still do it, like without thinking about it now, but like I used my breathing as a check system for myself. Because if I could take a deep breath with no pain, I knew that I was okay. So like if I did something like, say, I don't know, scrub the toilet, right? So now I'm bending over the toilet and I'm using my arm and I'm using some force, right? And then,
if you're scrubbing my toilet, you're using force.
When you're feeling normal, you just do those things and then you go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, right?
Right. Without thought.
But I had to, before I started, how am I feeling? To take a breath. And it wasn't even like a mental coaching thing. It was a literal physical thing for me. Like, am I okay enough to do this? Okay. And then I'll do it. And then I have to stop again and do it again and check myself and breathe. Okay, I can still take a deep breath. Everything's working okay. I can go to the next thing. And what I learned is if I go into, if I'm having like, if I take that breath and I feel something, then I stop and I take another one. If I feel it again, then I know that I need to deal with it or it's going to get worse. So I would go into the bathroom, shut off all the lights and stand there. And I couldn't go on the floor and do ragdoll, but I did a sort of version of ragdoll standing up. I just completely relaxed myself and I would stand there for a minute and take a breath again and take a breath again and take a breath again until it went away. And I could feel it dissipating.
It's sort of like a biofeedback.
Yeah.
You're using your brain with the muscles to train your body to relax.
I got to the point where I could feel it let go.
Wow.
Before I even took a breath. Like I knew when to take a breath. Like I would stand there, and it's not that I wouldn't breathe, but I wouldn't take a deep breath. I could stand there and just relax, and I could feel when it would let go, and I knew I could take a breath, and then I would take a breath and it would be gone.
So interesting.
Yeah. So I learned to do that over time. And again, this was years, but if I had learned to do that sooner, it probably would have helped. I mean, it helped my mental state. It helped my physical state. The breathing I learned is so important. The other thing I learned is I was trying to fix myself so I could take care of other people. I wasn't trying to fix myself to fix myself. And so I would always feel like I had to rush through things. I had to go to the chiropractor, but I had to rush through it. I had to do my stretches, but I had to rush through it. I had to get up early so I didn't bother anybody and I would be ready to go when everybody was ready.
I want to spend a little more time on that difference between fixing yourself so you can care for others and caring for yourself.
Yeah.
Sounds like that's the nuance there, is if so you're rushing through your opportunity to feel better so that you're moving on to, oh, I got to do this, and rather than what would be the most kind and caring thing to do for yourself. Like, sounds like it was a mindset that you had to figure out.
Yes, I definitely switched how I thought about it through the course of all those years. Once I put the focus on myself for myself,
yes,
it was much easier to do the things that I needed to do. You know, I like I said, I gave up gluten. I did my stretches. I made sure I drank enough water. I mean, I did all the physical things, but I also started doing all the mental work too, because I look back and I always take good, or I try to take good out of everything, even if it's a terrible situation. The good that came out of this was I learned that I need to take care of myself for myself, because nobody else can take care of me. You know, they could care for me by bringing me things, or if I was in a wheelchair, wheeling me around. But like, to really take care of yourself, you have to do that yourself. And that's what I learned. Like, I couldn't rely on other people to, not that I couldn't rely on other people, but I couldn't rely on other people to take care of me the way that I needed to take care of me. So I really had to put myself first. I really had to finally put myself first. And that is something I hadn't really done before.
It sounds a lot like learning to take complete responsibility for yourself. Yeah. You took complete responsibility for your own care and well-being. And in doing so, the benefit of that is that you are available to do the things that you love to do, take care of your family, which is, that's, I think a mom prides herself in that, being able to do that. And if that was a value of yours, to be able to say, this has to be my responsibility. I'm responsible for how I feel. And I am not that you caused any, the problem, but it's you saying, I'm responsible for how I manage this, because it impacts everything in my life that I enjoy.
Right.
So you could have totally said, I'm done. I can't do anything. And you could have stayed in that state of being helpless, I guess. Right.
Yeah. I could have easily played the victim and felt like a victim and acted like a victim easily, because I couldn't take care of I could have gone down that so easily. I couldn't take care of my kids. I couldn't laugh anymore. I couldn't,
enjoy life.
I couldn't really enjoy life. And that is not an exaggeration. When I say I couldn't laugh, I physically couldn't laugh, because it would not only hurt, but other muscles would pull, and then I would be worse off. So it wouldn't just like keep me stuck. It would actually make things worse. I mean, it was insanely invasive in my life. I mean, I just tend to, when we think about fight, flight, or freeze, I usually tend to fight.
Have you met Carrie? That's so unbelievable.
I usually go down the fight path. And so that's what I did. I was like, this is not taking me down. It's not taking me down.
There must have been days, though. I don't want our listeners to think that there weren't days when you thought, this is taking me down.
Yeah.
And
the stair day was a bad day. That was a bad day. That was a very bad day. I felt useless. I blamed myself.
Interesting.
Yeah, I blamed myself.
My fault. I'm injured.
Yeah. And then it's my fault. And, because I must have done something to make it happen. I don't know what it is, but I did something. Right. And I just felt completely hopeless and alone. I felt alone, even though my family was there, because nobody understood how awful it was.
It was sort of invisible, I imagine, because it's not like
invisible.
that you could go and say, I had been in a car accident.
Right.
I twisted wrong, or I reached for something wrong, and then my body was like game on.
Yeah.
And in a bad way.
Right.
So I mean, for those of us whose chronic illness or injury is an invisible thing, that's another layer that you put on yourself, because you feel like people are judging you.
Yes.
Because they're like, well, what's wrong with you? I don't see anything wrong with you.
Right.
Like, then you must be faking it.
Right. Or you're making a big deal about
Yeah.
it. You can't handle pain.
You're a hypochondriac.
You're being a wuss, like all the different things.
All that stuff. But it's probably worse because you put it on yourself.
And then I believed it too. Like, maybe I am making a big deal out of nothing. Maybe I do, so you start to believe that stuff, but it was hard to even just make plans for the future, because so I didn't want to do play dates with anybody, because I started to finally have good days and bad days, which was an improvement, because they were all bad days.
Yeah.
So now I would have good days and bad days, which was better, but I still didn't want to plan anything, because I didn't know how I would feel, and I didn't want to cancel. I didn't want to like get my kids' hopes up that they could go play with their friends and then not be able to go. So, I didn't want to travel to family's house, because I didn't want to, like, just getting in the car was hard. Being in the car was hard. And then getting to the place. So when I was home, I knew what chairs I could sit in. I had the right paraphernalia with me to make sure that my back was supported and things like that. I'd go to somebody else's house. I'd have none of that. And nobody really understood that. Well, you can just sit down when you get here. Well, but that's not really helpful, because your couch is different than my couch. Your chair is different than my chair. Now I'm just being ridiculous, Right.
That's what you're imagining they're thinking.
Oh, no.
And then you're also thinking,
no, I didn't have to imagine.
There's that. Sometimes you don't have supportive folks in your realm. So, I mean, there's layers and layers on this with when you are suffering a chronic illness or a chronic injury.
Yeah.
I mean, usually an injury you heal, and you break your leg, you might have to have surgery, you get a cast, you hobble around on crutches, you heal, and then it's like you're on with it. And I think you're over it. People want you to be over it. And it's staying in that alignment, that it sounds like one of the, and I'm totally putting words in Carrie's mouth here, that one of the gifts of this was that you learn to trust yourself.
Yes.
You learn to trust your body, listen to your body, because nobody's going to tell me I have to come and sit on their lumpy couch, because I know how that's going to feel. And you learn to advocate for yourself. So
yeah.
Do you wish it didn't happen? Absolutely. But those were the skills that you have gone through that.
Yep. There's a part of it where part of the guilt that you feel, or at least for me, but I'm assuming that other people feel this too when they have something happening, is
because it's human.
Is that, and especially as a mom, where you're focused on everybody else, you have to hyper focus on yourself. And that is something that we are taught in society that is inherently bad.
It's uncomfortable.
It's it's selfish, right? I mean, we talk about that, the selfish. Selfish is a word that people say is bad, but it's not bad, right? You have to be selfish sometimes. And when you have something like this, and I haven't had a chronic illness, and so I know that that's different than an injury, but the same things I think still apply, is that you need to be hyper-focused on yourself because you are the one in your body.
Right.
And so you can't get away from yourself. So when something has gone wrong with your body that needs to heal or need treatment, or maybe it's just about managing it and it doesn't really ever go away, you need to shift your focus to yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that.
It's going to demand your attention one way or the other.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
exactly. The thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if Carrie's story it teaches you anything, it's that it's going to demand your attention.
Right. It will literally make you listen.
Again, that brings us right full circle to what this podcast is about, is that self-care and caring for yourself from the inside out, that awareness that we've talked about, taking complete responsibility today, and how that impacts your healing, or even just navigating if it's something chronic that you'll never heal, but just trying to navigate that and advocate for yourself to be able to show up for your life the way you want to.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yes. I guess if we want to sum up my story, is that it did teach me self-care from the inside out, because that's literally what it was. So
I keep that image of you standing in the dark, in your bathroom, just breathing through it and listening to your body as the pain subsided.
Mm-hmm.
That is sort of like the visual that I see for this particular chat we had today. Standing in the dark bathroom, breathing yourself through it.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be.
Whatever it takes. Do not feel guilty about only focusing on yourself, not just in times when you're injured or have an illness, but at any time. If anything happens, or even if it doesn't happen, I mean, focusing on yourself is not a bad thing. And if we can get one message out there, I think that's what it is. Focusing on yourself is not a bad thing.
All right, everyone.
Well, we'll leave it there, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to us if you like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. This makes it easier for everyone to find us and helps us spread our message about self-care from the inside out. Have a wonderful week, and remember, making yourself the priority is the highest form of self-care.